Imagine waking up every morning, knowing you have another 100 years ahead of you. Feels like science fiction, right? But today, billionaires, scientists, and biohackers are pushing the limits of human life. Some of them are already experimenting with ways to slow down aging, maybe even reverse it.
As far as I know, it's the first time this has ever been done. You ever done a multi-generational?
The obsession with longevity is real. People are willing to go to extreme lengths. Biohacking, strict diets, high-tech supplements, and even something that sounds straight out of a dystopian novel. Blood boys. Yes, you heard that right.
It does appear to reverse the aging process.
The ultra-rich are paying the young and healthy donors for their plasma in hopes of extending their lifespan.
Dr. Jesse Karmazin is talking about transfusions with the young blood from teenagers, and he says it just may turn back the hands of time.
But here's the real question. Why are billionaires pouring millions into anti-aging research? What happens if only the wealthy get to live longer? Or, on the flip side, why are we so obsessed with immortality, even if it might not be the key to happiness? Does living longer make our lives more meaningful? Or does it just dilute the value of our times? To answer all of this, we'll have to go to the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Olsen.
We began by studying the world's oldest people, those living in the blue zones. Then came the biohackers, the billionaires who turned their bodies into science experiments. But the question is, did it work?
Scientists have rejuvenated the skin cells taken from a 53-year-old woman, making them equivalent to those of a 23-year-old.
Harvard scientist David Sinclair has spent the last 20 years working to defy aging.
It all comes down to the telomeres, tiny protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes. Think of them like the plastic tips on our shoelaces, keeping our DNA from unraveling. Each time the cell divides, the telomeres shorten.
So this is the video you've been waiting for. How?
Over time, as they get shorter and shorter, the cells can no longer divide or repair itself effectively. That is when the signs of aging show up: wrinkles, weakened tissues, and slower healing.
How does one increase their telomere length and live longer?
The story of parabiases begins in the early 1950s with a curious experiment that would lay the foundation for one of the most controversial ideas in the longevity science today. Scientists at that time wanted to understand the effects of aging, so they performed a procedure where they surgically joined the circulatory system of two rats, one old, one young. This experiment was called parabiases, and the idea was simple. If the young blood could mix with the old, it could reverse some signs of aging. The results were astounding.
Their brains are younger, hearts, their hair, if it was gray, just turns dark again.
Found that it was safe and feasible to administer infusions of young plasma weekly.
It seemed that the young blood had sparked renewal in the aging bodies. But why? What was in the blood that had this effect? It wasn't until decades later that scientists began to unravel this mystery.
Does injecting the blood of the young into the old reverse the aging process?
They discovered that certain proteins in the young blood, things like GDF11, might be responsible for this rejuvenation effect, activating the body's healing processes. The idea that young blood could actually help reverse aging seemed almost too good to be true. Yet, the idea caught the attention of scientists and, more importantly, the ultra-wealthy. Brian Johnson, the billionaire who tried to outcode death. His body, a data set. His life, a perfectly calculated equation. But did it make him human?
He's been on Blueprint for 2 years now with me, and we do all of our blood work together. And you're right, if you look at the results of our blood work, we're almost indistinguishable.
While researching in the blue zones, the areas where people lived the longest, we found something simple, yet very profound. It wasn't about avoiding alcohol or following strict rules. It was about living naturally, eating fresh food, staying active, and surrounding yourself with loved ones. The real secret, Ikigai, a sense of purpose. Jean Calment lived 122 years. She took daily walks, enjoyed some chocolate and port wine, and valued good company. She lived simply, focusing on what mattered, keeping life easy. No stress, just balance. So after all this, are we chasing the wrong dream? On one side, we have people paying fortunes for experimental treatments, chasing youth at any cost. On the other, we have those living in the blue zones, effortlessly reaching 100 by simply following a natural lifestyle. But the real question is, do we really need to go to such extreme lengths? Or should we focus on things that truly matter? Good food, good people, and stress-free life. Maybe the secret to longevity isn't in the labs, it's in the way we live. What do you think? Would you take an experimental path to live longer, or would you rather stick to the natural means?
We've achieved all that we wanted, but the real question is, are we truly happy?